Welcome to From Head to Heart and Home. We're so excited you're here to listen to our conversation. This is a channel created by women, empowering women to take intentional action to create the life they want. With your host, Shanda Soretti, certified transformational coach, and myself, Carla Center, relationship coach. And today we're going to talk about the grip of not enoughness. And I'm excited about this because this is something that really, I have never met somebody that doesn't have at least a little bit not enoughness, and such a juicy topic that we can just make such an impact if we really dive deep into it. And I'm going to let Shanda start off. She's got great stuff to share always.
Thank you. So I'm excited because we were talking about this before we press record and we're like, hang on a second, let's just go with this because we seem to be on like a little tangent with it. And so what we're talking about today when it comes to the grip of not enough is really, like Carla was saying, this is something we all have, right? And we all get to work through it. Sometimes it might feel bigger, sometimes it might feel small, sometimes you might not even notice it at all. But essentially, we all have this. It's one of our birthrights is being enough, right? And it's something that can deeply impact us to our core when we aren't able to understand it and kind of unravel it. And so, one of the things that we were talking about before we press record was what's lurking underneath this not enoughness, right? So, when we say I'm not enough, automatically the I am statement puts us kind of in the driver's seat, right? So, we're making this thing about us. And there's a really important reason why we do that we might not know, okay? That you guys might not know. So I want to share that. The reason why we make things about us is because when we do that, our brain then thinks that we can fix whatever the thing is, right? So when it's not about us, that means it's out of our control. We can't do anything about it. We can't fix it. But when it is about us, it means there's something wrong with us. We have some sort of inadequacy, but we can fix that, right? So the perfect example is you might be able to reflect back on childhood for yourself, but the perfect example is looking at like a child and a parent, for example. Let's say the mom wasn't attentive enough to the child to be able to give them the proper amount of love that this child needed, right? For whatever reason. Maybe like the simple example I always use is the mom was coming, like baby was reaching up, mom was coming to pick up baby. The phone rings, mom turns away from baby mid like pickup, okay? To that baby, something went wrong, something happened, and the baby wasn't like the baby made sense of I'm not enough in that moment. So mom left, right? Which is fascinating that our brain does that, but it does. And the baby makes itself not enough because then the baby thinks, well, if it's about me, then I can fix it. Something's wrong with me because something can't be wrong with mom. Mom is my protector. Mom is my provider. Mom takes care of me. And if something's wrong with mom, I might not survive. And our brain doesn't want to go there. So then it automatically turns it on us. So I don't know, Carla, if you want to add anything to that, but it's a really big concept. There's a lot of teachers that talk about that. Actually, Gabor Mate, who teaches a lot on trauma, he talks a lot about that, which is where I learned some of what I just shared with you guys. But do you want to add anything to that one? Because it's a big one.
It is a big topic, and that's kind of how I got my start in some of the things like the regressions and stuff I do, because that is when people talk about like trauma or something, people have a certain idea about it, but actually things like what Shanda was saying, they're imprinted on us since childhood, baby, all kinds of stuff. And so if you think about the fact that what currently is happening to us came from something that far back that
Mm,
we made sense of, it it it's it is a big concept because it's so wow, like how could my mom getting interrupted by the phone, which if you somebody took you back to that memory, you would not see it that way, by the way.
mm,
You would probably if she remembered it. And so then you're building your life based on these beliefs that happened back then, and you take information in
mm.
and reflect it back to, this is what I have to keep trying to get attention and show, prove that I am enough.
Right.
I was not, and when people say you were born enough, you're like, oh no, you just don't know me. You
Hmm.
don't understand this, and this. And we look for data to prove that not enoughness.
Mm.
And so that just like, so what that one of the reasons that concept's so huge is because then we have to admit that all this information we gathered may not have been true.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you're talking about the data that we collect because we're always looking for proof. We're always looking for evidence. And so my belief is this, if everything's 50-50, then we have just as much data on the other side of us being enough, right? So if we're going to take the time to gather and collect information, my one of my favorite things is like, let's look for the things that are going to work for us as opposed to working against us. Like, let's not use the things against us, let's use these things for us, right? And what's interesting too around like what's lurking underneath of this in not enoughness, like some of the hidden things that we might not understand or see, is this one. Like, we make it about us, right? We put the I on there and automatically it's about us, which is how some people would say very selfish. It's very self-focused. Okay. So I'm not saying it's selfish, but I am saying it's very self-focused, right? And again, I already explained why we do that. It's a survival tactic, right? It's how we try to survive certain situations. And so some of the questions that I like to ask are, we pick up things like Carla was saying when we're really young. Like all of our imprints and all of our beliefs come from like age, I think it's even like 2 and under. Some say 6 and under, but I think it's even like as little as 2 and under. And asking yourself the question, because we pick up other people's stuff along the way. I call it like the suitcase analogy, right? We're like, ooh, that's cool. Let's put that in there. Ooh, look at that. And we're gonna throw, like, kids like to like hoard and collect things, and we're like just picking up all this stuff and putting it in our little suitcase and toting it around. So what about you isn't you? Right? What about you is maybe a pattern that got passed down to you unknowingly by mom or dad or caregiver. What about you isn't true? Right?
Right.
So, in like, what patterns are you acting out? How are you showing up that isn't true to who you actually are authentically? Again, it's like putting on a blanket or a mask to get through something, but then we forget to take it off when we've gotten through the thing, right? So, I'm going to share a little story here, actually, something about masks. Halloween's coming up, and I've always loved Halloween. It was always one of my favorite. I call it a holiday even. And I learned why later in life. Why? It was because I could literally be anything, anyone I wanted to without question, right? And the crazier, the better, the more elaborate, the more eccentric, the better. And I was really into fashion, and I used to make my own costumes and stuff like that. But what I loved was it was an opportunity for me to not be me, not be the me that I was trying to perceive to be all the time, right? Not being the me who was struggling behind the scenes. I could put this mask on or put a wig on or put a costume on or put makeup on, and I felt like I just like disappeared. So it was for me like the most magical night, like a Cinderella night almost, right? Just not being me. And I then learned later in life that there was a lot more hiding under there, and
Mhm.
that my love for Halloween had a lot more insight and information for me to dive into and to heal. But I wanted to share that because you might be like myself and someone who used to kind of hide behind the scenes. So what masks do you hide behind, and have you forgotten to take some of them off?
Right. And is it just expanding that feeling of not enoughness because you're so hidden from yourself
Yeah.
that you don't even recognize you anymore? And
Mm.
so as you communicate with other people and interpret their behavior, you're going to bring more and more of that in of, oh, this just proves I'm not enough, collecting that data that we were just talking about. And we can even, some of our goals that we make are about somebody else and proving to them that we are what they say we're not. And sometimes we don't even find any joy after we've met our goals because it was never about us or who we truly are. It's all of that not enoughness hiding under there, and still we don't feel fulfilled because we've even more stepped away from who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this because what's coming up for me is okay, so we're all born like our authentic self, right? Like we don't edit, we don't overthink things. We literally just act authentically, right? Like kids are a perfect example. If they think something's funny, they're going to laugh, right? If they think something is not like is sad, they're going to cry. Like they're very authentic. But what happens again going back to childhood and imprinting and stuff like that is that we're showing up all the time authentically. And then eventually, over time, with societal norms and our caregivers, mom, dad, whoever it is, little by little, our authenticity is almost chipped away at. Like that's the analogy that I want to use because we're showing up authentically and then we're told, don't be so loud, or we're told that's too much, or we're told that's wrong, or whatever it is. It's some sort of rejection, right? And so we start to shut down those little parts of us. We start to hide inside of ourselves. We start to put the walls up and put the masks on. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here, right? Is like, where does this not enoughness inside of you stem from, right? It's not from today, it's not from now, right? It's something that got imprinted long ago and maybe multiple times in multiple different areas, which is why maybe you'll find it in your finances, maybe you'll find it in relationships, maybe you'll find it in health, you know what I mean, like the different
Right.
areas of life. Maybe you find it everywhere because maybe it's one of your roots and one of your cores. But really sitting down and being able to like explore with curiosity, like we always encourage you to do, but be willing to be vulnerable and ask yourself like those hard questions of, what am I carrying that doesn't even belong to me? What's in my suitcase that
Right.
wasn't there from the beginning, wasn't something that I would pick today to put in my suitcase? Because we're allowed to do that, right? We're allowed to like edit um, who we are. We're allowed to change and update and go through our tickle trunk and take out the things and bring in new things. That is absolutely the whole process of healing is like it's like pruning, right? There's brain pruning, I think is one of them that they talk a lot about when it comes to
Yes.
healing. And it's like removing the parts that don't serve you and then implanting, right? Um, Parts that will help you flourish and grow to be a higher version of yourself, a more evolved, healthier version of yourself.
Right. And that's one of the reasons our channel is called what it is, because all of that's in your head. And when you drop down
Mm,
into your heart, that authentic self is like, no, this isn't really like, maybe at some point this served me for whatever reason because of the people that were around me, but this doesn't serve who I truly am deep down. I
mm,
can I can just cut this off, let go of this and be
yeah,
okay with it. Not
yeah,
good, bad, whatever, just like, okay, I get to let it go. And that's the beauty in the fact that we can retrain our neural pathways in our brain
yeah,
to do things differently and react differently. Like maybe a way of communicating with people worked for you in the past, but it no longer does. And you're not finding relationships as fulfilling. And you're like, what was that? It's not working for me. Let me think about what really, if I came from my heart in my communication with the people in my life, what would that look like?
yeah,
Not, I'm protecting myself. This is my enough bubble. And if you treat me a certain way, then I'm enough.
yeah. Yeah, and things don't last forever, right? So you're talking about like those patterns that aren't serving us anymore. It's interesting too because even the new strategies that we put into place today to get us from where we are to where we want to be will we blah, blah, sorry, we will still require updates in the future. Whatever we implement today isn't going to get us all the way to the rest of our lives in a way of us being fulfilled and happy and all the things that we want, right? Like if we stay stagnant and status quo, Okay, fine. That's one thing, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're always talking about healing and growing, right? And
Right.
nothing lasts forever. And I always use the analogy of Mother Nature, right? Like everything is changing. It will come back around, sure, but it'll be different every time. Nothing is ever the same and nothing lasts forever. So we always have to remember that there are updates required, right? And that's a beautiful thing because you get to pick and choose and decide who you want to be, right?
Yeah.
You might not like a choice that you just made 5 minutes ago, and you get to decide new moment. Who do I want to be now? Right.
Right.
And have the love and the grace and space for yourself of we're human. We do mess up. We do make mistakes. We do fall on our face sometimes. It's normal.
Right.
And having those experiences should help you understand that you're human too, right? And that is
Right.
part of the experience. And when we're making those mistakes or showing up in ways that we would rather not, again, there's lessons to be learned there. There's insight for us to kind of dive into as to why, right? What did we miss? What did we forget? What did we overlook? So it's like, it's kind of like a journey of being, an inspector and like an investigator, right? Where we're just always curious, we're always exploring, we're always looking underneath the rocks and flipping things over and not leaving things unturned, right?
Right. And just being excited about the fact that we get to expand and learn new things. I mean,
Mm,
those of us have been around for a long time and have watched computers go, like, and phones and all of that. Like,
yeah.
imagine if we were still back there with all of that technology. Some stuff maybe would have still been outside and stuff. So I'm not talking about that. But,
Mm,
you know, watching them grow, we are doing the same thing. We're upgrading in a beautiful way and becoming more and more ourselves as long as we allow ourselves to do that.
mm,
Getting back to that authentic self that we were born as, the more we're like, okay, let me be open and curious and be like understanding that stumbling is part of the learning process and it is not a negative.
yeah,
It is like, okay, I'm learning from this? What can I learn from it? Not the anything bad about me, but like, oh, maybe this wasn't right for me, or maybe I need to shift it a little this way or shift it a little that way. And it does not reflect how enough we are
right,
because we are enough. And even if somebody's telling you you aren't enough, that is theirs and about their not enoughness and not yours.
right. And our worthiness is not it's not like what's the word I'm looking for? Like, we can't like it can't be changed. It can't be taken
Oh,
away. It can't be given.
two.
It can't be earned. It can't be diminished. It can't be bigger. It can't be none of this. It just simply is. It's inherent. It is. It's there. It's across the board for everybody. So, for anybody listening, or anybody who knows anybody who feels like they're alone, who feels like they're not enough, who feels like they don't belong, let me share this one and only thought. If this is like the only thing that you take away today, I'm like, let it be this thought of the fact that we mess up, the fact that we fall down, the fact that we do things messy sometimes and hurt other people and flounce around like a fish out of water is the very fact that we're human and is the very reason that we do belong. We are a part of and we are worthy because we all do that. That is
Yes.
if we don't do anything else, which there are many other things, but if you can just hold on to that one belief that our humanness brings us together, right? And society would rather have you believe that it kind of pushes you apart, right? And pulls us apart and repels each other from one another. But it's not. It's the fabric of what like weaves us all in together to make the big,
Yes.
giant, beautiful cloth that is like humanity, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That was so beautifully said. I yeah. And so just every time that you're starting to feel that way, just stop.
Yeah.
Put your hand on your heart and remember, I am enough. I've always been enough.
Mm,
Nothing going on in my life, nothing that happened before is going to change that. And just think about the fabric that Shanda was just talking about, because that's absolutely beautiful. And that's the truth. As long as we're ripped apart, then we aren't this beautiful, loving fabric that is
Mm,
us.
yeah. Yeah, and let that thought, that idea of us being woven as a fabric be something that feels warm. Like envision like wrapping that cloth of like humanity, of people, of the human race, like around you, and just kind of soaking in that, because we're so beautifully and wildly imperfectly perfect, right? And that is the beauty of it, is that we get to mess up, we get to do things wrong, and we get to just let it be what it is, see the beauty in it, learn from it, and move forward, and continue
Mm.
to make mistakes and continue to fall down and not get it right, because there is no growth in perfection. There is only growth in mess and challenges and struggle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. And if you just stop and look at nature, it's the same way in for any animal. So
Mm.
it's not just us humans. Everybody has the stumbling and the growth and the learning. And, you know, when we accept that and give ourselves grace, we have opened our world up to so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it.
Do you have anything else you want to share, Shanda?
No, I think we're good. I just want to encourage everybody to allow yourself, even just for a moment, even just while you're listening to this recording, to allow yourself to believe, even just for a split second, that you are as worthy as the next, and it is not changeable. It is constant. Um, Truly, truly allow yourself to feel that, and hopefully you can take that with you moving forward. Yeah. Thank you.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. So, if you enjoyed our conversation, share with those who you think would benefit from it. We love to have our conversations shared because we are sharing our heart and we want to make a difference in as many people's lives as possible.
Mm.
If you have not yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button, because there is always great things shared every week. And you can find us in the links in the description. If you want to discuss anything with us more, you have any questions, just reach out to Shanda or myself, and we will be back next week with another great conversation. Bye bye for now.